Hi everybody, it's Fiona here at the Sandia Mountain Natural History Center. Today I'm hiking out to some areas that have been burned in forest fire so we can take a look at the evidence of those past fires and what changes have occurred in our ecosystem since the fires happened. Come on and join me. Today's video will look at areas that have been burned in ponderosa forests, but also in other kinds of mixed conifer and pinyon juniper forests that are found here in the Sandias and around the West. After a forest fire or another major event in the ecosystem like a volcano or a flood, plants start to come back in the years following. Ecologists call this plant succession. So we've been able to witness the succession of different plants, different species at different times coming back into these areas after forest fire. And we study this with a really simple scientific tool called a quadrat, that white PVC square you see in the foreground. We go out once a month and take a photo, and then we can compare the photos over time to see what happens, just like a scientist would. Let's take a look at one of our quadrats over time. Succession usually begins with small things like grasses, then it'll get into wildflowers, and then small saplings, young trees, and other species of plants. We see a lot of gamble oak covering the ground. That's really been doing well since the fire. I see some tiny baby Douglas fir trees growing in over there. Right in front of me over here, we have some baby juniper trees. And none of these species would have been able to grow here if it weren't for the trees being cut and burned and opening up this space and sunlight and allowing them to get the nutrients and the resources that they need. Besides having all this new space for things to grow in, it also helps when fires burn up some of the pine needles on the forest floor. They have a lot of lignin in them, so decomposers don't break them down, and they'll build up unless fire burns them away. Removal of enough needles allows small seedlings like these pinyon pine babies to pop up. When forest fires come through and burn a lot of the dead wood on the ground, they're also putting nitrogen back into the soil for new plants to use. That's much quicker than if decomposers were to break down that wood over time. Here are some more of the species we sometimes find growing in after fire. Oh, you can see in this area a lot of young mullein growing in, and this old stalk of one from last year. But look at all those baby ones. As plants are coming back to an area after fire, so follow the animals. Insects are often some of the first to return within a year or so. Things like grasshoppers and bark beetles and other ones that live inside the trees. Then that attracts the birds that like to eat bugs, like woodpeckers and robins and other species. Woodpeckers also make nests in the trees, and then secondary cavity nesters come along, like mountain bluebirds, white-breasted nuthatches, and even saw-whet owls. Different species of lizards and snakes are attracted to the sunny open areas. As the plants grow and get big enough to eat, the herbivores come back, like rabbits and deer. All these photos were taken in a wildlife camera right next to one of our burned areas. And I was lucky enough to see this deer in person when I was hiking back from the camera recently. And if the herbivores are there, you know the predators want to come too. Animals like mountain lions will wander into burned areas to hunt their prey. If forest succession were to continue without further forest fires, then you would start to get the trees getting larger and larger, and then other species that like shade, like Douglas fir trees, Rocky Mountain junipers, would start to get bigger and grow in more into the area. And then you would get a mature forest with a lot of different species. As for the animals, numbers will continue to increase too. For 3 to 5 years after a fire, or sometimes even up to 10 to 15 years later, you're still getting new species, especially a lot of bird species. It can be hard to think of forest fires as a good thing when there's raging wildfires burning all throughout the West right now, and we're seeing and smelling the haze in the air, sometimes from hundreds of miles away. But these are the kinds of fires we don't want to have happen. Wildfires that are out of control and burning everything in their path. They're happening now because there haven't been natural fires for a long time in many forests, and because the effects of climate change are getting worse and worse. Raising temperatures in combination with longer droughts mean high fire danger. And of course, these kinds of fires are dangerous and bad for humans and for ecosystems. When they go through a forest, they burn just about everything in their path, and it can take hundreds of years for that forest to recover, rather than the much shorter amount of time after a small fire. This isn't the kind of area animals want to come to anytime soon, and without all the plants there, the soil isn't held in place, so when you get big rains like during monsoon season, the healthy soil erodes away. If we as humans do what we can to encourage healthy fires, and work to slow climate change as much as we can, hopefully we'll have healthy forests and a healthy planet for many years to come. Did you make a list at the end of the last video of how you thought fire would change the forest? How does it compare to what we looked at in this video? I'm glad you were able to join me today as we explored forests in the Sandia Mountains after forest fire. Be sure to check out our other videos for more environmental education content from the ecosystems of New Mexico. Let's check out one more fire plot together.